Hey, welcome to the deep dive. You know how we like to really get into a story? Well, today we're looking at something pretty interesting from the world of golf. It's about Angel Cabrera, the Argentine golfer. He's set to return to the Masters tournament in April 2025.
Yeah, and it's not just any comeback story.
No, not at all. There's a really significant backstory here because he's been serving a prison sentence.
Right, so it immediately brings up some big questions,
Yeah.
about second chances, redemption.
Exactly. How we view athletes, what happens off the course, and what it means to be welcomed back into that world. So, for everyone listening, we've dug into the details, mostly leaning on a really thorough CNN article. We want to give you a clear picture balancing his golf side with the controversies.
It's definitely more complex than your typical sports comeback narrative.
Yeah.
There are some pretty serious issues woven into this. That's fascinating, really, trying to piece together the timeline and understand all the different viewpoints.
Totally. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Cabrera heading back to Augusta in 2025. That's his first Masters appearance since, what was it, 2019?
That's right, 2019, so quite a gap.
Yeah, a noticeable absence. So what exactly kept him away for all that time?
Well, like you said, the CNN article lays it out. He was serving time in prison back in Argentina. It was related to domestic abuse charges.
Okay.
And the place he served time, Carcel de Bauer, apparently it's got this nickname, the prison from hell.
Wow. The prison from hell. Yeah, that paints a picture.
Quite a stark contrast to the greens of Augusta National, isn't it?
Definitely. And yet, despite all that, he still gets invited back to the Masters each year. How does that work? I know he won it.
Exactly. That's the key. His win back in 2009, that secured him a lifetime invitation. It's one of those long-standing traditions they have, honoring their past champions.
Right. The green jacket comes with perks. Okay, so let's dig into the reasons for the prison sentence. What were the specific accusations?
Well, according to reports from the Associated Press, the initial charges came from two of his former girlfriends, accusations of domestic abuse.
Okay.
And this led to him needing to appear in court in Argentina. But then, in 2020, he actually skipped that appearance
Skipped it. Why?
to play golf. He went to Ohio for a PGA Tour Champions event.
Wow. Okay, skipping a court appearance for a golf tournament, that seems like a risky move. What happened next?
Yeah, it didn't go unnoticed. It triggered an Interpol red notice, basically an international wanted persons alert, which led to his arrest later on in Brazil.
In Brazil. So he left Argentina?
Seems so. He was apprehended in Rio de Janeiro, spent about 4.5 months in prison there. Then he was extradited back to Argentina to face the charges.
Okay, and the CNN article mentioned some really disturbing details about those accusations, didn't it? Particularly from one partner.
It did. It referenced an account from Cecilia Torres Mana. She gave a written statement to Arado First Person News back in 2021. And her allegations were, well, they were very serious. Physical abuse, psychological abuse, even sexual abuse.
Gosh.
She described incidents like being hit, being controlled. She mentioned being locked in a closet once when they were in Texas and being stopped from going to see her own mother when she was dying. Just awful stuff.
That's incredibly disturbing. Locking someone in a closet, preventing them from seeing a dying parent.
And she also said he threatened her if she tried to leave him.
That paints a really, really difficult picture. And it wasn't just those initial accusations, right? There were other legal issues, too.
No, unfortunately not. In 2022, he was found guilty again, this time for threats and harassment against another ex-girlfriend.
So, multiple cases.
Yes. All told, he ended up serving about 30 months in prison, combined time in Brazil and Argentina. He was paroled in August 2023. And there's another little hiccup, wasn't there? In 2024, he couldn't actually play the Masters because of a visa issue. Couldn't get it sorted in time.
Right, I remember that. So, crucial point here. How has Cabrera himself talked about all this? Has he addressed the accusations?
Well, initially, he denied them, maintained his innocence, but his tune seems to have changed somewhat more recently. There was an interview with Golf Digest in 2023.
Yeah.
He admitted he'd made serious mistakes. He said something like, I wasn't the devil, but I did bad things.
Okay, so an admission of wrongdoing, at least.
Yeah. And he also expressed remorse in a statement to the Daily Mail, regretting his actions, the lost years. He even mentioned reaching out to his former partners, asking for forgiveness, saying they had the bad luck of meeting him when he was at his worst.
Bad luck. Interesting phrasing. So a shift from denial to acknowledging mistakes and regret. Now, obviously, this whole thing is controversial. How has Augusta National, the club itself, handled his return? They must have commented.
They have. The chairman, Fred Ridley, addressed it. He acknowledged Cabrera as one of our great champions. But he also balanced that. He explained the invitation stands because Cabrera served his sentence, and the tradition is to invite past champions.
But,
But Ridley also stated very clearly that Augusta National certainly abhors domestic violence of any type.
okay, so trying to walk a fine line there, honoring tradition while condemning the behavior.
Seems like it.
Hmm.
A very carefully worded statement, you could say.
And what about the wider golf world? Players, commentators, what's the reaction been like there? Is it unified?
Oh, definitely not unified. You see support in some corners. The article mentioned Ben Crenshaw being excited to see him back, potentially at the Champions Dinner, saying he'd welcome him personally.
Okay.
And Cabrera's coach, Charlie Epps, apparently said that some big names like Bernhard Langer and Gary Player actually wrote letters to Cabrera while he was in prison.
Really? Letters of support?
That's what Epps claimed, yeah. Suggests a level of perhaps empathy or belief in second chances from some within the golf establishment.
But surely, as the CNN article points out too, opinion must be sharply divided, especially considering the impact on his victims.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of this conversation. You mentioned Cecilia Torres-Mana's account. The article noted she expressed lingering fear, even after he was jailed initially. That kind of deep, lasting harm makes celebrating a comeback very complicated for many people.
Yeah, understandably.
So, yeah, is his return something to celebrate? That's where opinion really splits. Can you separate the athlete from the actions? Should you?
Big questions. And what about Cabrera himself? How does he frame his return to Augusta, knowing all this scrutiny will be on him?
He's acknowledged that people will have different opinions. He said he respects those views. He's talking about it as a second opportunity in life, one he needs to take advantage of, wants to do the right things now.
And when someone asked him directly if he should be allowed to play,
His response was pretty blunt. Something like, I won the Masters, why not?
very direct, focusing purely on the golf achievement as the qualification.
Pretty much. Doesn't really engage the other complexities, does it?
No, it sidesteps them. Okay, shifting gears slightly. What about his actual golf game? The article touched on his recent performance.
Yeah, interestingly, he actually got a win recently, just before the Masters this past April, actually. He won a tournament in Florida, the James Hardy Pro Football Hall of Fame Invitational. It's on the Senior Champions Tour.
A win, after all that time away and time in prison.
Yep. His first win on that tour in almost 11 years. And apparently he only got into the tournament because someone else withdrew. He was an alternate.
Wow, that's quite something. Didn't he say he didn't even touch a club in prison?
That was the report, yeah. Makes the win even more surprising, maybe.
And what about his record at the Masters itself? Is he historically good there?
He has been, yeah. Pretty solid record. 6 top 10 finishes over his career. Obviously the win in 2009, and he lost in a playoff another year, too.
Okay, so he knows the course.
Definitely knows the course. But it's also worth noting, in his last 3 appearances before his absence, he missed the cut each time.
Ah, okay. So past glory, but more recent struggles there, even before the time away.
Exactly. So potential is there, but recent Masters form wasn't great.
This whole situation also kind of puts a spotlight back on Augusta National itself, doesn't it? The CNN piece mentioned how the club's image has been changing.
It did, yeah. For a long, long time, Augusta had this reputation, very traditional, maybe slow to change on certain social issues.
Yeah, here's your statement, perhaps.
Perhaps. But the article points out that especially over the last, say, 15 years, there have been shifts. They finally admitted women members, Condoleezza Rice and Darla Moore, back in 2012.
Right.
And since 2019, they've hosted the Augusta National Women's Amateur. Big steps, relatively speaking.
So it does create a kind of interesting contrast then, making these moves towards inclusivity, hosting a women's amateur, and then also welcoming back a past champion with Cabrera's record of, well, serious offenses against women.
It absolutely does raise questions. How do those things sit side by side? It makes you think about what the club prioritizes. Tradition, the rules of the invitation, the completion of a legal sentence. Their statement suggests they're leaning on the fact he served his time and the tradition of the champion's invitation, while trying to distance themselves from the actions themselves. It's complex territory.
No easy answers there. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear Angel Cabrera's return to the Masters in 2025 isn't simple. It's got so many layers, way more than just a sports story.
Absolutely. We've touched on, his incredible golf highs like winning the Masters, but also the really serious legal consequences for his actions off the course. Domestic abuse, prison time, and then this whole debate swirling around second chances, especially for famous athletes.
And hopefully for everyone listening, pulling from that CNN piece and other reports gave a solid, balanced look at what's going on, the facts, the context, the different reactions.
Definitely. And it really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? It prompts a bigger question, maybe for our listeners to mull over. What does it actually mean when sports organizations, or even us as fans, welcome back a celebrated figure who's committed serious offenses? What factors should carry the most weight? The athletic achievement, the sentence served, the impact on victims, the possibility of genuine change.
How do we balance all that?
Exactly. How do we balance the idea of redemption against the need to acknowledge harm and uphold certain values? It's a tough one, and it goes way beyond just golf.